Thank you for joining me today. This is Stop Innovating Blind, Lean Product Market Fit Research. I am Luciano Pesci. I have two roles. One is at the University of Utah, where I am the founder and the director of research for the Utah Community Research Group. At the University of Utah, I teach statistics, microeconomics, applied research, and data analytics, and American economic development and history. I'm also the CEO of Imperatos, which is a team of data analysts, data scientists, and economists who use agile research methods and data analysis, as well as economic artificial intelligence to help our clients beat their competition. So we do, at Imperatos, we do product market fit research. Sometimes this is for a startup. Sometimes this is new product development, which is the enterprise term for this. The process is still identical. So this is a method. The method I'm going to talk about today is useful whatever stage in the business life cycle. So if it's a startup, this is particularly useful because at that moment it is so critical to get it right. You can use the metaphor of an angle over time, that if you're just slightly off, even a small amount in your aim early on, it's not very big, but the further and further down the road you go, the worse and worse it gets. So this is a method that's very useful for startups, but it's also incredibly useful for an established organization that is trying to develop a new product. And this is the other place that we do this kind of research for clients. So the presentation today is going to be 30 minutes in the presentation itself, and then at the end we'll open it up for Q&A. There are 4 portions to this presentation today. The first is that you should start with the end in mind. So it's very, very easy with research to just dive in. People do this all the time. They get an idea and they just go out and they start writing questionnaires and they start talking to people. And that's not how research is supposed to happen. You need to take a moment at the beginning to figure out what information you need and how you're going to use it. And so I'll go into a little bit of detail about that philosophy. And that's true of these first 3 items. They're sort of background information on the overall process, but then the 4th piece of this presentation, I will get into how we've actually done this with a case study for a fintech startup named Spera. So whether you're an existing enterprise or a startup, when you decide to do product market fit or new product development research, start with how you're going to use it. What is the end goal? How is it going to affect strategy? You do not have to go into research cold. In fact, it's not advised. You should, once you've realized what you're going to need information on, go talk to experts in the field. You can find vertical experts, you can find market trend experts, you can find people at competitor organizations or people who used to be at competitor organizations. It's very easy now to go out and tap existing expertise. And this doesn't just have to be in the form of an actual conversation with an expert. This can be reading industry trends that are being reported on in blogs. There's a lot of existing information out there, secondary research that you can do, secondary information that you can find if you're willing to just take this moment to go look before you start the actual primary research, which is the 3rd part of this presentation, having customer conversations. So, and I'm emphasizing the word conversations. At Imperatos and at Utah CRG, I teach and we do a lot of very, very heavy quantitative things. We will still always start whatever research we're doing with a qualitative phase. Conversations with product users, whether they're your users or a competitor's user, are invaluable for getting the proper context that you're going to need down the road as you get more quantitative data. And then I'll end this presentation with the Spera case study where all of this is going to be shown how it was done. So starting with the end in mind is the basis of any research design, whether it's product market fit or it's something else, it's segmentations or it's preference optimization. You still need, as a group, to get very clear before any research is done what information you're after and why. How will it be used? There is a tendency with research to just go out and collect any information. And then you find that you either have answers that don't inform any strategy decisions that you're facing, or the answers that you have are partial because you didn't put enough thought into what kind of information you need to make that decision. So you start with the end in mind. You look at the goals. In the case of product development, it's very easy. You need a new product. You're trying to find a market and a fit for that product. If you already have an existing product, then really what you're talking about is, well, which features should you emphasize or which messaging should you lead with? That's not the case with product market fit. This is a moment where you're starting to realize, well, what features do I want to have into this product? You can still look at messaging. You can still look at channel mix. You can still look at pricing. But you're still also trying to figure out what it is you're going to sell and message about. And if you're very clear early on about those strategic goals, the big unknown, so for example, monetization. What is the monetization plan? How does price, even if you figure out what people will pay, how does that price fit into monetization? Do you need a range of prices? Do you need to figure out different tiers? So it's not good enough to just go out and say, how much would you be willing to pay? Well, how is that information going to end up getting used in the actual monetization strategy? If you're clear about these end goals, it also keeps your research very focused. And I'll talk about agile research methods in a couple slides. That by itself has a huge benefit for keeping the focus of everybody involved. But when the goals are clear and you have formalized them into a list, we call these hypothesis briefs, or sometimes we call them the client hypothesis briefs. This is a formal list where the information that's needed and the strategy use it fills is available and viewable to everyone that's working on the project, whether they're researchers, whether they're the founders, whether they're the marketing team within the organization. Everybody can see what information is being collected and then how that information is going to be used. And this is not a static one-time thing. Research is very fluid. You may get down the road 3-4 steps and realize that you do not have the right direction. You're not going to get the kind of information that you're hoping. So treat this as a fluid document, something that evolves over time. That should not take very long. It is not a long process to get your whole team to sit down and to outline clear goals, big unknowns. Ask people, what's keeping you up at night? If you start to trace that decision back, you'll start to learn the kind of information needed, and you just put it in a list. And then you take that whole list, that hypothesis brief, and you start to figure out and you order them in importance, and you say, well, which of these could be answered by experts? By going and tapping into existing knowledge, piggybacking on existing expertise. These experts can be influencers. They could just be an academic that has no real market influence, but that is an expert on this vertical or on this kind of technology. It could be a futurist, a person who follows technology overall. It could be somebody who advised a competitor organization. The point is, there are a lot of other people who are out there right now, and many of them are very willing, often for free. They're just excited to talk about their specialty. Sometimes, though, it's not hard to book 2 hours with them. They might even have a consulting rate right on their website for you to see. But you can tap into those experts so that you can start to figure out, well, here's all the information we think we're going to collect. You can show them the list. That can be part of the conversation that you have with them. And you can piggyback on their expertise to cut to what matters, not what you just think is important or what you think is interesting. And that's what the benefit of this expertise, even if you have to pay for it in this period, which you do not always have to do. Again, there are a lot of experts who are willing to do this part for free. But even if you have to pay for it, the cost benefit, the ROI on this is enormous. It accelerates what you're doing. It would take you years in some cases to get to the same level of expertise. But they're still experts. They're not necessarily the person that's going to use the product that you're having to create. They might understand the market and they might understand some of your product ideas and how that will fit. They may not be the actual user. And so this is where customer conversations come in. It's pretty much the same process. You'll see that when we go through the Spera case study here in a moment, you'll see that the way we find at Imperatos, the way we find leads for the research, is identical to the way that we find experts. The conversations are often structured in much the same way. They're still recorded in the same way. These are complementary activities, but you should be clear. There are experts, and then there are the actual users. And you need to talk to a lot of users. This is based on Steve Blank's lean startup principle, get out of the building, Talk to the people that you're going to use. This is the number one reason that startups fail or that new products fail. It's because it doesn't match a market need. These should be conversations, not heavily constrained surveys where you're trying to get quantitative same responses in the hundreds of values. This is small scale, 5, 10, 30 interviews with customers where you do have a set agenda for the conversation, but it is a conversation. You're listening, you're adapting, you might ask whole new questions because of the way the conversation is going. You're trying to get into the mind and understand the product, price, message, and channel mix that would work for these customers. What product features are they looking for? What needs does that serve? What are they willing to pay for those needs? Do they have other existing solutions that they're using? And so there are 4 types of customers that you should always be conversing with when you're doing this portion of the research. And they are your existing customers if you have them. So if it's a new product, you could still talk to your existing customers about what they think about that new product. Or you could figure out who you think your customer is if you don't have any yet, and you could go talk to that group. And they will usually, in that case, come from one of these 3 other groups. The second is a competitor's customer. It is incredibly easy to find competitors' customers today because they're tweeting at the competitor, they're hashtagging them, they're visiting their Facebook page. It's very easy to find customers of existing competitors and to go talk to them about their experience. And then there's prospective customers. So these are people who are interested in whatever product you or your competitors are offering, but they haven't made a decision yet. So if you think about the customer journey, these are people that are in the awareness stage. They know that they're looking for a solution. They haven't picked one yet. And then there's a 4th group, and you should talk to them because what you'll understand from them is how to cut through to people that matter versus people that you're never going to convert with any amount of information. And this is non-customers. These are never going to be customers. They're not going to be your customer. They're not going to be your competitor's customer. They don't care about that product, but you can still understand why. And then you can understand how to avoid trying to attract that group versus your existing or your competitors' customers. So product market fit, again, not a terribly long process to go through. There's really just the 3 pieces that I talked about: getting very clear on the goals and the information needed, going out and talking to experts, and then having these structured conversations with actual customers. You're then just using in real time the information you're getting from the research to go back to the list of your information needed, to check things off as they get answered, and then to start implementing on the strategy standpoint. This is not intense, and it should not be a very long process. At most, if you're being extremely thorough, this can go on for about a year at most. But portions of it, identifying the goals early on, weeks. Talking to experts, that can get spread over months. Sometimes their schedule's a little harder to nail down. Customers, you're probably going to talk to them in waves. You're going to go talk to 5, find out some information, change what you're asking, go talk to another 5. That can take month after month after month. The point is, you will have to decide at what level the information you're getting is enough for you to then say that that's been checked off the list and I'm going to go act on it from a strategy standpoint. So let me give you a case study example of one of the most in-depth product market fit research projects we've ever done. So freelancers, if you haven't been following freelancers and the freedom economy, as it's being called, they're going to be half of all people working in the United States in the next 4 years. And I would say that that is a conservative estimate. The technological trajectory right now that's making freelancing possible, combined with the economic trajectory of businesses having very high benefits costs, needing to cut benefits, not wanting the risk of a full-time employee, the heightened specialization over skills, all of those things are leading to the birth of this freedom economy. I think it will be an almost total transformation. I think large organizations will be the far minority relative to the rest of the economy, which is just single individuals who do very specific things tied usually to a high skill level. And this gig economy, as it's also called, 50% just in the next 4 years. So Spera was a fintech focused company from the beginning, and we'll talk about how they started to pivot towards freelancers, but they knew they were going to do something in the fintech space. As of right now, today, Spera is a fintech platform that combines invoicing, payments, and project management in a very seamless way so that freelancers can focus on doing their skill and not on running their back-end business. It took 12 months of research for Spera to get to where they sought money, went through their seed round, and now they're building their MVP. In those 12 months, it went from fintech down to fintech for freelancers. Then it expanded within the freelancer needs to the invoicing, not just payments, and then also to the project management. This included quantitative surveys. This included conversations with customers. This also included researchers from Imperatos with the founder going and following freelancers in shadow interviews to watch them work throughout the day and to really start to learn. They also tapped, Spera also tapped freelancers themselves to do things like their logo design, to do things like their wireframes. This is a tool for freelancers being built by freelancers. But what the research after 12 months showed them was the product features that were core. They started with 27, they ended up with 3. But those 3 were critically important. They are the core product features, and there are additional ones that will be phased into the full platform and some of the other versions down the road. It showed the messaging that they needed to use, the kinds of things that would resonate with freelancers, why they became a freelancer to begin with, the purpose of their existence as a freelancer, and what they hope to accomplish in the future. They also learned the channel mix, where these freelancers are spending time, where they look for work versus where they post about work. And then also the pricing model that they could follow, and this was tied directly into a bigger monetization strategy. So early on, the founders were very favorable to the lean principles, just like Imperatos. And so we used the business model canvas as the starting point. This is also where the hypothesis briefs came from, and this was a list of the things related to the market that we needed to understand, the things that we needed to understand about the customers, the things around monetization, the things around product use, on getting paid, how businesses even pay them. All of this was still contextualized around a couple key documents. The business canvas, model canvas is one, and the hypothesis briefs were the other. Again, this did not take long. I think that this whole process took about 4 weeks in total, and they were very, very thorough. But that also made the research very focused, because immediately we had interview and survey questions ready and conversation scripts ready, and we just then had to go find freelancers. So we used at the time a tool called NUVI. This is another company from Utah. If you're not familiar with NUVI, they're a social monitoring and brand listening tool. We used this because it was a great way to aggregate users. So we would set up monitors in this tool for anybody who was talking about Venmo, or anybody who was talking about Elance or Odesk, or someone who was saying something about freelancing. And then we would look through this feed, which is this image on the left here. This is the feed that is what NUVI actually looks like. You click on a bubble, the size of the bubbles are tied to their networks and how much influence they have. We would find a person. From that person, we'd go to their profile. We'd see if they had their website listed. We'd see if they had their email address posted. And then we would either tweet at them or direct message them or email them if we got the email, or leave a comment on their page that we were a research company interested in talking to them about freelancing. And then they would go to this short selection surveys, very, very few questions, just to make sure they're really a freelancer, they're really qualified. And then we'd set up an interview. We were offering people the ability to do it by FaceTime, by Skype, by Google Hangouts, by GoToMeeting, by phone, or in person in some cases. And overwhelmingly, people just wanted to talk on the phone. So very quickly, we realized we don't even have to try that omni-channel solicitation. We're just going to offer them phone interviews. We used Google Forms. These are free tools. All of these tools that I'm showing you are free. There are more established options. Tape a call is an inexpensive way to do this. If you're going to really need to rely on the recordings, that I would recommend you actually use a machine itself, a computer, and you do things like QuickTime screen records or QuickTime audio records, and you just call through the computer instead of through your phone. So with the call being recorded and the interview form made, the analyst was able to have these very natural conversations, and that information was being immediately transcribed into a data set where we could extract it from Google, where it was visible to everybody, to a CSV, a trivial step, where we could then use tools, more advanced tools than what Google Docs has, or even Excel. We use R and Rstudio for a lot of our programming at Imperatos, and so we moved everything into R and Rstudio again, also open source and free. And the benefit of that over something like Excel or something like even the Google Doc, where if you're just going to produce summary statistics, you're just doing descriptives, tabulations, crosstabs, maybe very simple stuff, you can usually still do that in Google Docs or in Excel very quickly. You can program it all in R, so as you keep getting new data set, you just run it through with the new data, and each time the same metrics are popping out. And there's even a free tool called R Shiny that you can visualize data in that way. But R also has analytical capacities that are not in Excel or in Google Docs. One of those examples is sentiment analysis, natural language processing. This is great for unstructured data, especially if you have a lot of it. So if you are doing new product development and you end up with 10,000 surveys, and one of those surveys was, why would you buy this product? And it's unstructured, open-ended question. It's tedious for a person to go read through that and try to get what is happening with all 10,000 responses. It's trivial for a computer. And so natural language processing talks about topical analysis. It talks about sentiment. Is it positive or negative? You can do other things like word diagrams and word clouds where you start to see the general chatter in the data. At Imperatos, we have a core value, which is that you think broad, you mine deep, and you explain simply. And this is the most important step for making whatever you find actionable. If you didn't have a good direction from the beginning, it doesn't matter, it'll never be actionable. But assuming you are now on the right path with your research, you can blow it at this step, the final step, which is translating all of that complex information from advanced analytics, from personal research, from following people around and watching what they're doing, to then translate it all into answers that inform the strategy that it was tied to from the beginning. So in the case of Spera, we were using agile research methods, which means we were reporting every 2 weeks. Here's the next round of conversations we had. Here's what we've learned this week that's different from everything else we've learned at this point. And over time, it keeps everybody focused and on task. It keeps the research really focused. And it allows for very rapid pivots. So it was very early on that the freelancing focus took over. But once it was about freelancers, it fundamentally changed a lot of the research questions in the hypothesis briefs. The 2-week increment that's tied to agile development is extremely useful for research. And it's much better than the traditional market research approach that could take 4 or 8 months and be huge and quantitative. But in 8 months, you may not even be on the same trajectory as a company anymore. And so if you're going to do product market fit research, I highly, highly encourage you to look into agile research methods because it fits naturally with the pace of what is happening anyways. Whether it's an existing company doing new product development or it's a startup that's really trying to find the product and the market fit for what to actually build, having that discipline to meet every 2 weeks around the research to then be implementing as you're finding out in 2-week increments on some of the recommendations, it is highly, highly efficient. And Spera now has an MVP that they are executing with extreme precision. Their marketing is very dialed in. They have all kinds of marketing testing going on. The product features are very easy to build because the user stories were clear. They had their personas for the marketing. All of this came out of that very simple question to begin with, which is, what should we build? What should it be priced at? How are we going to express that we have it to people? And where are we going to do that? So that's how we have done product market fit. I will now open this up to questions. If you want to post the question first in the question area, I'll then unmute your mic. I haven't seen yet a question. Are there any questions around product market fit, the Spera case study in particular, or if you have more of a new product development approach, how any of this changes? Last call for questions. Okay, here we go. Finally came through. This question is from Rod. Can you mention again the automation tool that you use to test for product market fit? Can you show a list? Oh, I'm sorry, automation tools that you use to test for product market fit. Rod, let me unmute your mic. Maybe you can explain what you mean by automation. So your mic is now working.
Yes, I just had a question. You mentioned a lot of the general approach and the general idea of starting with the end in mind, and then you mentioned a number of various tools like NUVI and Google Forms and things like that. Do you have any, as you think through the process that you go through for your clients, do you have a go-to list of the tools that you most frequently use and would recommend others use as well?
We do, and I have another presentation that's similar to this that I presented a few months back where I have them all listed. I will make that available. I'll attach it to the handouts so that you can get it after this webinar is over, but I'll also go through that list right now with you. For the aggregation of the leads, well, actually, let's go back all the way to the first step. I'm going to pull up this slide. So with starting with the end in mind, Strategizer has a really great interactive canvas tool. And I don't know that it's free, but it is one that we use because you can also see how the business model canvas has changed over time. You can also just use it at this point. Google Docs are great. So Google Sheets, the hypothesis briefs, we use kind of a burn down system, very similar with other agile development. And so we will set it up in a Google Doc where we can track all the individual questions and the strategies that they're going to inform and the amount of times in those 2-week iterations, how long they've been researched before they become complete. So Google Docs is by far one of the most robust solutions for doing a lot of what I showed with Spera. So if you notice, we use Google Forms. That's a free survey tool. It means a SurveyMonkey account is very inexpensive. A Qualtrics account is more expensive, but you definitely get a lot more functionality. You're definitely paying for a different product with Qualtrics than SurveyMonkey. But for this kind of research where it's small scale and ongoing, it's usually much easier to just create this in a Google form. And Google does have a lot of, you can automate with Google in other ways. So there are programs like Mail Merge is a program that you can integrate with a Google Sheet that will allow you to send batch emails, the same email to a group of people without getting shut down for being spam. And that's very inexpensive, or you can upgrade for, I think it's only like $26 for the year to get, I think it's a capacity of 1,500 emails a day. There are automation tools for social media. So Hootsuite is one. I don't know about one that would allow you to direct message, and you have to be very careful because Twitter in particular, if you keep posting the same thing to people, if you keep tweeting at them and saying, hey, I'm a researcher and I want to talk to you about this product, after I think it's 26 to 30 of them, you'll get flagged for spamming. And then it's a temporary hold. So you have to be, when you go to do the solicitation, it's a little harder to automate, but a lot of the tools are still very, very cheap or inexpensive to use. As far as market expertise, there are a lot of really good trend websites that you can see, but just by itself, Google Trends, Facebook Trends, Twitter Trends, There are a lot of interactive tools right now online that'll allow you to search and see what's happening. There are a couple other really good digital marketing tools. So SpyFu is one, BuzzSumo is another, Rival IQ is one, Mentions.com is one. So there's a lot of tools, some that you have to pay for, some that are free, some that will do very minimal amounts. But we'll provide that whole complete list. As far as the conversations, and by the way, most of the tools available are about getting that expertise, finding out the trends or piggybacking on an expert's opinion. Fewer of the tools are available for the interviewing process because it's still a one-to-one human interview conversation. But tape a call is free. It is not very reliable. So I do want to warn you, especially if you're on an iPhone. It seems to work much better on an Android device, but we no longer use NUVI and we no longer use tape a call for doing this because we developed a proprietary tool which we do not sell or give anybody access to except for our clients. We have a proprietary tool that uses different social APIs to find people and to put them into a data set. So one of the limitations of NUVI is you have to go through the stream and click each bubble to find a person, which is very tedious. And since we're very analytically capable, we really wanted access to the raw data. We found out that their data sift relationship precludes that. We then found some APIs from Twitter that we could tap into instead. We have some other scraping methods available to us. And so we go out and we just aggregate leads ourselves, and then they're scored and processed, and then they get dumped into MailMerge, and then they get solicited. And then as far as analysis, I would really encourage you, if you're not a computer savvy person, to still look into R, because it's nothing like Excel. It's nothing like SPSS or SAS or Stata or any other existing software tool you might know or use. But when you talk about automation, it is incredible what you can do through R. And it's all free. It's all open source. It has a massive community. It has all kinds of online courses that you can do for free. So DataCamp is one that I use. I use R in a couple of the classes I teach at the University of Utah, including the microeconomics course. And so they're economists. They're not even data scientists in some cases. And they're still able to learn R through DataCamp, which is free. It's a free online tutorial training program. There's an intro level and an intermediate level now. They're both free. And it will get you to where you can create the script in R to run the same analysis. And then you don't have to spend that time clicking drop-down menus and doing all the other programming in Excel that you might do. You just upload the new data set, hit run, and out comes all the same output. So that's a really good tool for automating analysis. But like I said, we will definitely provide a complete list, and I'll attach it to this when I upload the recording for this webinar as well. Later today, I will also attach that list by the different areas that we use them.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, it doesn't look like we have any other questions, so thank you again for joining me today. I will post this shortly. If you have anything else that you'd like to talk about, feel free. My contact information is here on the last slide, and we can connect offline. Thanks, everyone.